we're going to be talking about the importance of language and language choices that we use in our studios, especially when it comes to reinforcing boundaries and running a good business. Because, in the realm, when it comes to independent music teaching, here's something that happens, right? This journey that we start in when we're a passionate educator and shifting into a successful business owner, it's fraught with challenges. You all know this. I don't have to preach about it. One of the biggest challenges that we all face, and we see this in forums, we see this in, the blog topics that people choose to write about, in emails, etc. One of the biggest challenges that we face is boundaries. And when we're balancing all the things like teaching, scheduling, taking in, new clients or planning recitals, etc., doing all the admin stuff that's behind the scenes, living a life outside of being a business owner, when we're balancing all of those things, enforcing and reinforcing boundaries and those meticulously crafted studio contracts and policies that you all have created, that can feel daunting. So if you've ever spent way more time than you wanted to crafting an email or a text, please know that you are not alone. Setting and maintaining clear boundaries and reinforcing those contracts can feel like tricky business. So today what we're going to discuss is we're going to dig into language and a specific transformative language shift that you might consider if you would like to reshape the way that your business operates when it comes to boundaries. And with mindful practice, with this shift, you're going to be able to revolutionize the way that you interact with clients, the way you view yourself as a business owner. So I hope that you're excited about this. Before we dive into all of the goodness, let me do a quick check behind the scenes to make sure that everything's going well. I'll play a little music for you. And while we're playing this music, let me know where you're tuning in from and if you're ready for some transformative language. Let's do this. Welcome back. I've got my tea this morning. We have our first snowfall of the season. It's official. November 1st, we woke up to snow. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but there we are. All right, so today, the topic of the day is this one small but very mighty language shift that we can start practicing in our businesses so that we can create better boundaries, so that we can live healthier, more protected lives outside of work, and also so that we can view ourselves as more confident business owners and that our clients can do that as well. So we're going to be diving into this language shift real quick. Let me remind those who are new, or actually let me just say for those of you who are new. If you don't know me, my name is Sara Campbell. I'm a business strategist, mindset, and marketing coach for music studio owners and online education experts like yourself. And we go live here on Wednesdays where we talk about those topics. And that's what we're going to be digging into today. We're going to be digging into a little bit of mindset, a little bit of business, and putting those together to hopefully give you new tools that will help you to enforce and reinforce boundaries in your business. If you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're starting to put out new short content over there, which is kind of exciting. So if you subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll get notified when the short content is dropped. I have set up the Savvy Sara bot. Let me tell you about the Savvy Sara bot for a second, for those who are new. Savvy Sara bot does a couple of different things. We set her up with show notes from every single broadcast. So it's a short recap of all of the points that we've touched on. If we refer to any links during the broadcast. She also will deliver links to you as well. And she serves another purpose. If you like to get reminded about when we go live, we're not live every single Wednesday, but if you would like to get that little notification when we go live, the Savvy Sara bot also sends out a text message with the links to our Facebook and to our YouTube channel every time we go live, so that you don't have to search for the links and all of the things. So if you would like to get set up with her and get all of that information, you can drop the word language down below if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook. YouTubers, go ahead and look in the description of this video and in the live chat, and you'll find a link that you can click on to get a hold of that as well. I would love to, and for those who are tuning in right now live or on the replay, if you love the Savvy Sara bot and the way that she gives you information, let everybody else know down below, because she's been feeling a little lonely lately, maybe because I haven't done some live broadcasts, but she's all set up and ready to go. All right, so let's get moving and grooving and unpack this issue. Okay. So let's unpack the issue. I wanted to give a little background about why I chose this topic today. I just recently got back from running a conference with the Speakeasy Cooperative. That is the voice business group that I am a coach in. And we had a conference in South Carolina, and I had the pleasure of presenting a couple of different presentations at this conference. And one of them was about viewing ourselves as the business or the business owner. And I got to do this presentation with Michelle Marquette DeVoe. And it was just, I felt that it was very revolutionary, this idea of, really breaking down the ways in which we can separate ourselves from the business, right? And view ourselves as the owner rather than the business itself. And so that's where this topic is inspired. Excuse me. Because it got me thinking about something that I've been encouraging my own clients to do for a long time. And it all started with encouraging myself to do these things. So the issue is that oftentimes we see ourselves, since we are sole proprietors, a lot of us are sole proprietors here, we see ourselves as the business. And when we do that, we have a tendency to take things more personally than if we were to view ourselves as the business owner, and working, being somebody who owns the business, runs the business, but also is a person outside of the business. So this brings me back to when I was first opening my studio and trying to craft policies. And it's interesting. I still have 2008 Sara policies floating around on my computer somewhere. And it's so fascinating to look at the way that the language has shifted in my policies over the year. Here is the shift. Okay, the shift is going from I and me to the studio or we. And I realize that it can feel like super awkward to be using the word we if you are just a single person in your studio, but we will unpack that in a moment. Okay. So yes. Oh, I love this. Okay. So we're going to bring that comment up and I'll come back to this in a second. I clicked on the wrong thing. Let's try this. Cassandra's given us takeaways over on YouTube. She says the takeaway is being the business versus the owner, right? We really want to be the owner and not the business. We're taught that we're the business as the brand. Yes, there's a big issue around that, and it's something that we're not going to unpack completely today, but we are going to look at this one little language shift. So back to the shift. The shift in starting to use language that separates yourself in some areas. Now, this is not going to be appropriate in every single area of your business, but using language that separates yourself from the business. So let's look at some different areas that you might consider shifting this language. And then we're going to break it down into what this does for the client, what this does for the business, and what this does for you, because it benefits all three areas. So this shift, where might we use it? Something that we mentioned at the top was, we were talking about contracts and policies, and shifting the language inside of a policy or a contract or terms and conditions, whatever you're using in your business, can be really, really powerful, right? Let's take an example about business hours, right? So if we had a statement that said something like, I teach lessons every Monday through Friday from 3 to 6. If we take that statement, right, and somebody reads say, I teach lessons, there's this kind of implied thing that, okay, this is the choice that you personally are making, and that you could make a different choice, right? So there's there's this implied thing around like, oh, those hours might be flexible. And side note, this language shift is not going to fix all of the issues by itself, because there's going to be reinforcement, and we're going to get to that as well. So we have that statement versus a statement that says the studio is open from X to Z. It's a subtle but really powerful shift. And we can take that into lots of other different examples around how you treat makeups in your business, if that's something that you even do, to how the studio wants to communicate outside of business hours, etc. It's a really, really powerful shift. So I want you, actually, let me see, I'm going to use Kristen's words. I invite you to take a look at your contract and read it through and see how many times the words I and me pop up versus the studio or the business or the school. And just start to take note about where you might consider some shifts. And if you have specific examples in your policy, like if you have your policy near you right now and you're like, I don't know how to make this shift, I'd love to do that live. So just go ahead and pop that into the comments here. So let's break this down into the three areas. I love this, Cassandra. This is great. She says her takeaway is the shift from I to me to the studio we, and saying we is so hard for me. For me. Yeah, exactly. Yes, Laura. And this is a great transition. Okay. Laura says, I feel like using the words the studio instead of I creates a stronger boundary. Exactly. That's what we're trying to do here. And, again, I'll reiterate, the words themselves are not going to reinforce the boundary. That's where becoming the business owner and really stepping into the role as business owner is kind of our job, right? Okay. And yes, I love this. That shift, the studio is open. It's a very powerful, subtle shift. All right. So let's break this down into how this very small language shift can benefit the client, the business, and you. And I'm going to take a sip of tea, because for those who have been here for a while, you'll know that I had pneumonia like 6 weeks ago. It is still not my favorite. All right. All right, here we go. I got to look at my notes for this. So this is good. All right. So what does this do? How does this shift the way the client views the business? How can this benefit the client? One of the ways is that this really leans into professionalism, using the phrase the studio or the school or the business in contracts or policies, etc., emphasizes that there's an agreement between the client and the business entity, the business itself, not just the teacher. Now, this can be very, very powerful for multi-teacher studios. If you're still using I language, right? It's a great shift to start thinking about the business, right? And I think that's more natural for multi-teacher studio owners. And it's something that doesn't come as naturally to the sole props. So it's that emphasis that the agreement between the client is with the business and not you personally, right? It also leans into this idea of customer service. So it sets this expectation. This is a great thing for clients. Like, it sets this expectation that they're going to receive a high level of customer service as the studio, right? Or the business suggests a structured customer-centric approach. Now, of course, you as the business owner get to decide what level of customer service and when that customer service is going to occur. This is not to say that this person will expect you to answer texts at 9 p.m. or emails at 10 p.m., etc. So it has to do, for the client, it has to do with professionalism and how that contract is viewed, and also, what level of customer support and service and how that customer support and service is going to be delivered from your business. So those are two big things here. I love this. Karen says, oh my gosh, I can see where I can revise my policy statement. If you are enjoying this, let me know. Actually, if you're enjoying this right now, do me a little solid and give me, go ahead and hit the heart buttons or like buttons wherever it is on this post. That would be great because, social proof and all that jazz. All right, so let's get into how does this impact the business? We'll bring it. That's awkward. We'll fix it. That's fine. Okay. For the business, right? And we're talking about the business as being something that is separate from you, the owner, because we're going to talk about the owner in a second. For the business, this promotes consistency in communication, in policies and procedures, and it ensures a standardized and fair approach for clients. So this is a reminder that the business contracts, the policies, etc., is something that goes across the board for everyone. This is also going to give the business a framework for handling conflicts and positioning the business as the intermediary to resolve those conflicts. And I know it just feels weird in your brain at first because it's so common for us to view ourselves as the business. But really, the business is separate. The business is an entity, and you are the owner of that business. So for the business, reiterating that again, it creates more consistency with conflict resolution, and it encourages us as the business owners to look for that consistency. So when it comes to a client asking for exceptions where there really is a hard boundary, and let's be honest, some boundaries are softer than others, but let's say that there is an instance where a client asks for an exception from a hard boundary. And okay, side note, people ask because they do not remember your policies and your contracts in your business because they did not write them. You spent a lot of time writing them. And these people who are lovely clients, and we adore them, they don't always read those things. And let's be honest with ourselves. We don't always read the contracts that we sign either. So there's no judgment here. A question is just a question. So with that, I lost my train of thought. Shoot, that's okay. Let's keep going. So with that conflict resolution, if somebody is to come to you with that ask for a hard boundary, it's easier then to respond, right? For the business to respond and say things like, the studio hours are X, Y, and Z. Okay. Another thing that's really great with the shift for the business is if you are ever considering some kind of a scaling inside of your business, whether it's, bringing on someone as an assistant to help with admin, or down the road ever thinking about expanding into a multi-teacher studio. And I'm just going to say this because my inner Michelle, that voice of Michelle Marquardt-Deveau is in my brain. Remember that there's a huge difference between being a sole prop and shifting into a multi-teacher studio. The main difference being that you are going to go from being a teacher to a manager. So before you ever consider that shift, talk to someone who knows about making that shift. I can suggest people for you. Okay, so when it comes to the business, again, this idea of delegation and possibly scalability, when we shift that language, it makes it easier to delegate tasks and responsibilities to a staff member or an assistant, and they can act on behalf of the studio, even if that assistant is actually you and you are responding on behalf of the studio. Okay. Yes, I love this. So, great. Karen says we just used we in responding to a prospective ideal client, and that we, referring to the business. I love that. Excellent. Okay, so that was for the business. Let's shift into the owner. I know, Cassandra, I can barely manage myself, let alone someone else. I feel you. That's my office assistant. But actually, that's not. We have the most amazing assistant here at Savvy Music Studio. Shout out to Caitlin, who makes all the things work. She's lovely. We adore her. Okay, so the third area here. So this language shift, what does it do for you as the owner? Well, let's frame this. Actually, I should have said, like, as for the owner / human being who also has a life outside of owning the business. Okay, what does it do for us? Well, with boundaries, it helps in setting clear boundaries between your personal and your professional life. And this also helps us to reduce the likelihood that we're going to take things personally, because when we're able to respond to asks and use language around the studio, rather than then it creates this lovely little barrier. It creates this separation. And with practice, with mindful practice, it gives us the ability to see ourselves as separated from the business. This also, in line with this idea of boundaries, this can also help us reduce emotional burden, because this will minimize the emotional burden of the client issues and this is going to sound weird, but like, this is important. This is going to allow us to depersonalize some of those interactions, and that's going to lead to better stress management. And I want to kind of zoom out for a second and also include that there will be times when I and me is more appropriate, right? And you, as the business owner and the human being, get to be the person who decides when it is appropriate to take off the business owner hat, to take off the teacher hat, and to put on a human hat, right? That caring human being hat, to speak to the client in front of you. You get to be the person who decides when you're going to do that. It's really, really powerful. Okay. If there are any questions about anything that we went through today, please feel free to drop them down below. I mentioned earlier, sorry, my nose is really itchy. I'm like touching my nose constantly in this broadcast. If you have any questions about policy language, and then you're not sure how to reword it, like, please feel free to put it into the comments or, message the page. And in just a moment here, we are going to do our rapid recap. But let's bring up the takeaways that came by. And this is your opportunity to bring those up on the screen if you're live. So I see, Karen says, hi, Bjorn. Yes. His little head's cut. Can you see his head? I can't tell if you can see his head. No, not really. He's just like cut off there. Hey there, Shirley. It's so lovely to see you. And Cassandra has another takeaway. She says, you'll separate yourself from taking things personally. And yeah, that gives us it gives us a tool, right? This is a tool. And this tool will take practice to use. It will not come naturally at first. It may feel like kind of funky when you're putting those shifts into your contracts. But remember, that's what they are. They're contracts. They're policies. And oh yes, this is great. Susan says, I'm going to get into my studio policies right after this. I love it. Fantastic. Oh, look at all the shifts that are happening today. Okay, so let's do our rapid recap. I am ready for this. Oh, before we do the rapid recap, if you are wanting to get The information from today's broadcast, the Savvy Sara bot, is all set up. If you drop the word language down below, she will deliver you the show notes from today, which include a little recap of everything that we've done and links to if you would like to sign up for text or email reminders, or if you are not already on our weekly newsletter. We put out a Monday newsletter every week with links to some of the things that we've done here at Savvy, but also a list of links that I have found interesting. I tend to send out at least 3 things, a podcast, a blog that I might have read, and probably something funny from Instagram, because that's just how I roll. And I think we're going to start including more links to recipes, because that's one of the goals that I have as a human being right now, is to start experimenting with more recipes. You'll also get pictures of my cat, because branding, and that's on brand. All right. So there you go. I love it. So last takeaway here from Shirley is that that this consistency is key with this. All right, great. So drum roll, please. Let's do the rapid recap. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done this. Oh, Plinny's over on Instagram. Hey, Plinny. She said she missed it, but I'm going to watch the replay. Very interesting topic. I love it. So good. Okay. Let's do our rapid recap here. Yes, I know. You can't go wrong with the cat picks. Absolutely. I get very excited to pick them out every week. All right, here we go. In the realm of independent music teaching, this journey from passionate educator to a successful business owner can feel challenging, especially when we're balancing all the things like teaching and adminning and scheduling, etc., living a life outside of work, all of that good stuff. When we're balancing all those things, enforcing and reinforcing those meticulously crafted studio contracts that you have created can feel difficult. So, maintaining clear business boundaries can feel tricky, but there's this really great transformative, small but mighty language shift that you can use. And that's what we're talking about in this little recap here. So the shift, what is it? It's the shift of this language shift that we can use in our business is shifting from using I and me into using the studio and possibly we, as in the royal we, the business. We can use this shift in all different types of things. We can use it in policies and contracts. We can use this in our email and text correspondences, etc. And this shift can be so powerful as a tool to separate the way we view ourselves, so that we are not seeing ourselves as the business, but as the business owner. So how does this benefit different areas? Well, it benefits 3 different places. Benefits for the client, benefits for the business, and benefits for you, the business owner and the human being who has a life outside of business. So what does this language shift do for the client? Using the words the studio versus I or me, if we use that language in contracts, this emphasizes that the agreement is between the client and the business entity, not just you, the teacher. And that can be really powerful. It also sets this expectation of customer service as the studio, or maybe the royal we as the business itself, suggests a more structured and customer-centric approach. When it comes to the business, shifting our language from the let me try that again. When it comes to the business area of things, when we shift into using the words the studio versus I, this is going to promote more consistency when it comes to conflict resolution. So in communications, policies, procedures, this is going to ensure a more standardized and fair approach for clients. It's also going to help you start developing a framework for handling conflicts and positioning the business as the intermediary to resolve those conflicts. It's also a great tool when it comes to delegation. So if we are using the phrase the studio, it's going to make it easier to delegate tasks and responsibilities to staff or maybe virtual assistants who can act on behalf of the studio, even if your virtual assistant is actually you and you've given yourself the name Stacy to respond to emails about tuition. And what does it do for the owner? Well, for the owner, it really helps us enforce boundaries. It helps in setting clearer boundaries between our personal and our professional life. And it also helps us to reduce the likelihood of taking client issues personally. When we can shift into using the language the studio versus I and me, this allows us to reduce the emotional burden a little bit. And it minimizes that by, and this sounds weird, but depersonalizing those interactions a bit, which in the long run leads to better stress management. All right. If you've enjoyed today's broadcast, please let me know. And if you want to get the information from this broadcast and any links that we might have brought up, you can drop the word language down below. I love all the comments here. We've got like, can't stop looking at Bjorn. Yep, he's just back there doing his thing. All right, thanks all for being here. We will be back next Wednesday. And in the meantime, stay savvy and stay you, because you are an amazing music teacher and there's no one in the world quite like you. And I think that you are pretty dang awesome. Ooh, I'm going to shift the language there. Are you ready? You are an amazing business owner and there is no one in the world quite like you. And I think you're pretty dang awesome. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.